And not only that, almost every single person who RSVP'd asked a question,
Oh, cool.
which was very overwhelming for me to look at the spreadsheet. So thanks for making my eyes bleed, basically.
Yes.
And I actually shared it with the person who works with you, just for yourself. It's just really interesting to see what people ask, and so everybody who's joined, the questions that I prepared really come from you, and I've organized it into a number of categories, which, obviously it's business, right? Arlan's business, your own business, career, navigating career, identity, understanding one's own identity and how that gets expressed in what you do. And then a ton of personal questions, largely around imposter syndrome, resilience, giving less fucks about what other people have to say and think. So before we officially dive into all of that, I'm going to read your little bio. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I got it from your website. So
Okay.
Arlan Hamilton is the founder and managing partner of Backstage Capital, which is a fund that is dedicated to minimizing funding disparities in tech by investing in high potential founders who are people of color, women, and or LGBTQ. Started from scratch, and you will talk about scratch here. Started from scratch in 2015. Backstage has now raised more than $7 million and invested in more than 130 startup companies led by underestimated founders. I really like that you included the underestimated part. So in 2018, Arlan co-founded Backstage Studio, which launched 4 accelerator programs, also for underestimated founders, in Detroit, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and London. And the reason we're here today, or the reason that we're doing this conversation today, is I think May 5th, you released your book. It's called It's About Damn Time. Love that. Which shares the hard-won wisdom that Arlan picked up on her remarkable journey from food stamp recipient to venture capitalist. And you can check it out at It's About Damn Time. I got to ask you, so May 5th, that was a few days ago. What was that day like?
Oh, it feels like it's still that day. It is. That was Tuesday, and a lot of people started downloading the audio version that night, the Monday night, midnight on Monday going into Tuesday. And since then, it's just been like one long day of so many things, excitement, first and foremost, that if I can describe, how it's been for me, but mostly just a pride in seeing, an excitement and a pride in seeing how people are responding to the actual book itself. Because you can kind of promote the book, the title, the cover, you can promote the thing, kind of the hype of it. But until people are really digging into it, who don't know you, who are just, you hope that they get something out of it. Until you start hearing from them, you don't really know for sure. And that's when things changed. Yeah, that's when things really, it was immediate. I had people who would listen to the entire audio version all the way through that first day, or people who would get the ebook, or if they pre-ordered, they'd have it, so you had this immediate reaction to things, and it's been overwhelmingly positive. And I'll just say, this book is not, it's partially a memoir. You'll learn a lot about me, and maybe stuff you don't want to know, but you'll learn a lot about me. But it really is a business book, and it really is about you as the reader. That was really important when doing this at all. There's really no point in doing this if it wasn't going to affect you, because I'll do the whole long memoir in a few decades. I'll do that, and you can read about me. This is more about what do you do with that information? So it's just been a wild ride so far.
And a few people who sent in their questions, it actually wasn't a question, it was a comment that they pre-ordered.
Cool. That's great. I appreciate that. That's amazing. It's so great to see all of you.
Get ladies paid. That's what we're, obviously support the message, but, and help people, but we need to get money in your pocket, right?
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Please.
I know that this is your gig and everything, but I would like to know just a quick bio on you, just a refresher, because I love this Get Ladies Paid. I love this whole vibe. I know you on Instagram, but what's your deal?
Yes, yeah. Well, that's a good prompt, just in case people are joining who actually don't know who I am. So I'm the founder of Ladies Get Paid, and I started it about 3 years ago. Just very frustrated and, frankly, really angry by reading
Mm.
about these statistics around women, the wage gap, the leadership gap. And the statistic really for me that kind of got me off of my ass was finding out that Hispanic women make 55 cents to the dollar. And
Mm.
the reason that one stuck to me was actually some shame that I felt because I didn't know it. And I'm an educated person, right? I assumed it's 78 cents to the dollar, which, it's an aggregate, right? But
Yeah.
I fully understand that it gets, depending on where you're from, whether you're married or not, right? And this was before the 2016 election. And people weren't talking about it. And I felt, I didn't know what to do, but at least let's start having the conversation.
Mm.
Um, and from there, I realized in hosting events to just get people talking about money and sort of what they were frustrated with at work, I realized salary negotiation was a way to start. Let's just help people close the wage gap in their own lives first. And then we can start, unraveling other things, right? What does it take to get to the place of strength where you can, demand your worth? So fast forward 3 years, we've got about 75,000 women in the community. They're all on Slack. So they basically crowdsource career advice from each other.
Mm.
We do webinars. We have a conference every year. We had about 1,000 people come this year. And the programming has really divided into two, right? We've got the career part, which is kind of like the getting the money, but we got to also do finance because, this, if you're not investing your money, right? If it's just sitting in your bank account, it's actually losing money over time, right? So how do we get you to grow your money?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the ethos here. We do joke that we're trying to put ourselves out of business, given our mission, which, not going to happen in probably 216 years and maybe longer now that we've had this amazing pandemic happen. So that's me. And obviously I'd love to talk to you after as well. Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm going to
that's
follow.
fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you. I know someone asked about the mic. Should I answer that question real quick for anybody who's interested?
Let's how about let's maybe do that at the end because I do want to
Okay, that's a good idea.
good stuff. And also we're going to follow up with everybody after so we can send
Yeah.
them things. I just want to read this amazing quote. Maybe it's my favorite quote from you. And it says, "I didn't come here to get your scraps. I didn't come here to get your pity or your charity. I came here to go toe to toe with you, head to head with you, and to take it all." I literally have chills, right? Do you remember saying this? Like, where were you?
I do.
This is an amazing quote. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, I don't remember where I was, so I don't remember that exact, but I do remember saying it. And at the time, I remember thinking, I remember when I saw it out in the world, I was like, I want to make sure people understand what I was saying. I don't want your charity. I was talking to very specific people. I wasn't saying that I'm want to come in here and take from you all, because I don't. In fact, it's the opposite. Is what you're saying is I want to empower all of us to take it all. But when it comes to, I was being asked about Silicon Valley and about how do you have confidence walking into the venture capital space when it's mostly straight white men who have been here, who have privilege. And that's what I was responding to. I was like, and I did, when I started, I had people, so many, and still today, I still have it, where some of them are well-meaning, but most of them are not. These guys will come in and sort of just pat me on the head like, "Oh, you're cute." That's a cute thing you want to do. That's a really heartwarming thing you want to do for those people, for people of color, for women, for LGBTQ. That's really cute. And I had to let them know in various ways, by saying it boldly and by doing it, that I was not here for, life is too short for that. I was not here for them to allow me to tolerate me in the corner of a room. I was here to go toe to toe with them, and I still am.
I love that. And also that you're here to make money. To keep going back to that
Yeah.
you're not a nonprofit here where you're just like giving grants to people. You're investing in them because you think you're going to get a return on them.
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
What did you want to be when you were growing up?
When I was younger, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I had two things that I knew that were kind of like, they weren't exactly solid ideas, but I knew that I wanted, and both came true. I wanted to, after seeing Janet Jackson perform at 13, I was 13, and I saw her in the front row of a concert for my first concert ever. And the book talks about how that happened. I looked around that night after just the most amazing night of my life, up until then, of course. And I said, whatever this is, I want this. And I didn't mean being on stage, because I didn't have that kind of aspiration, but I wanted to be around that energy of that diversity and of that inner, that just energy that was happening. And that turned into working in live music as a career, and the production side of things, behind the scenes, production coordinator, road manager, things like that. And then the other thing that I wanted was, from the time I was 5, I was playing Monopoly, and I would go around to every adult or like older child in my family when I would be around them. And I would just beg someone to play Monopoly with me. Please play Monopoly with me. And from 5, and so what I knew was I remember playing and like the feeling I got when I could buy stuff. And I remember thinking, I want to own that store, or anytime we would pass by like a for lease sign or a for sale sign on a building that was like a commercial building, not a for lease for home. It was very specific. I said, I want to be the owner of that. I'm like 7 years old, So both of those things kind of went with me, and I've been following Richard Branson and people like that, and since I was a young teenager. So I wanted to have ownership, and I wanted to be on the road.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I ask, because I really think we are sort of who we are when we're little, or the seeds. The seeds are there. I see Christina wrote capital letters, "Yay, I still want to be Janet." Love Velvet.
Yeah, I mean, so many people do. According to the guy on Jeopardy, Ariana Grande is Janet. Did y'all see that video of the guy? It was a Jeopardy question just last week, and they showed a video of her performing, and they said it was about a Control album, and they said, who is this person? And I guess it's a compliment because she's over 50.
Yeah.
And they're saying that and the guy says, Ariana Grande. And then there's a video of, people reacting to that.
Like, racism, ageism, I don't know.
I don't know what it was, but I'm going to take it as a compliment to her that she can pass for someone in her 20s.
That's a very positive way of looking at it.
Yes.
Okay, so when did the music is here, but I'm going to now look in a different path, right? The path of venture capital. What was maybe the aha moment for you, or kind of the sort of spark that made you realize this was a direction you wanted to go in?
Yeah, there's a lot in between, and all of it is covered in the book, and I encourage everyone to check it out. But after working my way up to working on the tours that I had wanted to my whole life, I turned 30. I was kind of turning a corner and was now at a place that I was wanting to be, and then kind of skyrocket from there. All again behind the scenes, all very low resources, but still exciting. And I sort of rediscovered the entrepreneurial side of myself, because it always had been there. I'd started a music magazine in my 20s. I'd started everything you can think of before that. And when I learned about Silicon Valley through like understanding what like Airbnb was, and Ashton Kutcher and Ellen and Troy Carter and Scooter Braun, they were all making these investments. So that was like in the back of my mind. I was like, what is that? What are they doing? That was early 30s. I started looking into it, and I said, oh, that's what I am. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a founder. So I should start a tech company. And I started researching starting a company, all the things that go along with that, including fundraising. And I wanted to know everything I possibly could about how to start a company and how to fundraise and how to do this and that and the other. And that's when I call it the Erin Brockovich stage happened, because I was researching something else and I stumbled upon this other thing of 90% of venture capital goes to straight white men in the United States, like where they make up a third of the country. What? Like that? I mean, I just saw that stat. I saw a report by Catherine Finney. And then I saw other like little bits and pieces here, and like little articles, and 5 pages in, and it said Silicon Valley has a problem. It said there's things we need to work on it, but they weren't doing anything. I couldn't see where it was being changed or challenged. And so I said, if I could probably hack my way into raising a round of funding, sure, because I got myself here. I could probably do that. But what's going to happen the next round where I need that support? What's going to happen with this institution the way it is? And B, what about the hundreds or the thousands of other people like me who aren't going to be able to do that and get in because of this systematic issue that's going on? I said, if I don't look to address a bigger picture problem, it won't matter if I get in on this, if they let me in on this round.
Mm-hmm.
So I made that decision around 31-ish to try to raise capital. First, I thought I would raise a fund for LGBTQ founders. It was going to be $1 million fund for LGBTQ founders. I went out with that and didn't get any traction. People just didn't understand why you would do that. Like, why? It was just a very blank stare back at me. And then I said, you know what? Let me start with who I identify. I'm a LGBTQ, so I'm a lesbian. I'm a Black woman. Let's start with people of color, women across the board, because I talk to all sorts of people. And then let's talk about LGBTQ. And that's what I'm going to invest in. And I'm going to try to raise like $5 million to do that. And I went on that for years, and I got no's left and right. And then things started to change.
Let's talk maybe a little bit of logistics here, because I got some questions from folks about networking, even specifics down to, do I slide into their DMs? Like which I don't know at age 31, if, were people using Instagram then when you started, if that was even a way you were getting in touch with people, but literally, who did you email? How did you message them?
Yeah. Well, I'll preface the answer by saying in the book, I talk about how I got my first true paying touring gig. And that was through a very strategic plan. And again, when I think back, you know how you talk about things, you think back to kind of visceral things. I think back to being hungry when I was doing this. I think back to the roommate that I had when I was doing this. It wasn't like an easy situation. But I remember saying, I'm going to email 100 tour managers and production managers over however long it takes to do that. And I'm going to talk to them individually. At least a portion of the email will be individual and custom to them, because I don't want to do a spam. That won't help anybody. That'll be a waste of all of our time. But I'm not going to write, a book for each of them, but I am going to have this customized first paragraph, and the rest of it will be about kind of my history and what I would ask of them. And I did that, and I researched. So what I did was I researched as many of these as I could. I got a trade paper that you got a 14-day free trial, and I got the free trial and I turned it back in because I couldn't afford it, and it was this trade paper, but I got some emails from that, right? And then other things I used were Google. Google is my best friend. Google's my BFF. Okay,
well,
it should
free.
Well, Google the search engine, not the company.
Okay, let's definitely be clear.
Yes. And I just looked things up. I looked at tour books. I looked at old PDFs of tour books of saying, this is the tour manager for the Janet concert, and this is this and that. And I reached out, and I did that over a 2-month period. So I'd send it out when it was appropriate to, because I had done, and I knew it was appropriate to because I had done enough research on the person to know that I could speak to them directly, and that I wanted them to say yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think people they skip that part. They just want any yes. So they don't think about what happens when that person really says yes. Do I really want that? There's an intention about that I think has been very helpful to me. So I would send it off if it checked those marks. So these are the stats. I received 20 of 100 that I sent out. I received 20 responses.
Okay.
And this would have been 2009 or 10. I received 20 responses. I got 3 in-person meetings, and I got the 1 yes that started my paid career in touring. Mm-hmm. Those were my stats. So it took 100 of very highly curated, highly vetted, and intentional emails, and researched emails to get to the one yes that led to everything else in the touring career, which I then went on. I went from working with a touring band in a van down by the river to a decade prior to working with will.i.am at Wembley Stadium several years later, right? That all of that was because of this, and this. So that's what I did when I was getting ready to reach out to investors. Now the stats were about the same of yeses to output, but because I needed so many more people to say yes, we're talking thousands of conversations. It was, there's nothing easy about it, and there's nothing, there's no magic potion pill or otherwise. So that's the answer. That's the true answer.
Yeah.
But it was the key of it. What I don't want you to take away only is, okay, if I reach out to enough people, I get the yes.
Right.
It's not just about the quantity. It's the quality of the communication. And today, what I know that I didn't know before, what I've learned and what I try to make sure other people know is that you're not going to win someone over by giving them any sort of sob story, any sort of long story about yourself. Sometimes we think we only have that one shot, so I got to tell them everything and make sure they know, and that's what's going to win them over to come back to me. Instead, what you want to do is leave them wanting more. You want to give them a little bit of a mystery and a little bit of a hook to let them say, come back to you. And a lot of them won't have the time or the desire to, and you have to be okay with that. But that's why I say, when you send an email out to people that you want something from, especially if you know them to be busy, rich, like there's a Venn diagram, busy, rich, or super powerful, whatever, right? You do not let them, I'll say it like this, they will not scroll. They're not going to scroll. If they see the email at all, what they're not going to do is scroll with their thumb or with their little index finger on the laptop. They're just not going to do it. They don't have the time. I learned that over time. So what you want to do is, boom, this is me. I'm being cordial. I'm telling you what's going on. I still, to this day, and I used to be this person, so I do not have a problem with it. I'm just trying to help. I still, to this day, get emails and DMs that are so long, I just can't. I'm just like, oh man, I wish I would have known what that person had said, because I will never be able to get to that. There's just no way. And I'm one of the nice guys, if you will. I'm one of the ones who will sit here and, as exhausted as I am, will go through and try to catch everything. You're dealing with people. Most people are not going to do that. And it's not because they're not as good person. It's because everybody out here is busy, and time is everything.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is to say, it took a lot of work and a lot of strategy and a lot of determination.
A lot of writing, a lot of talking. You mentioned sort of like saying, what is your hook up front for you? What was your hook?
My hook at first, and still, at first, a few years ago, it was, I tried to be very careful in not calling myself someone's caddy because of the connotation of that. But what I was trying to say was, let me tell you which way the wind is blowing. Let me be your ear to the ground. Let me see something you're not seeing. Because I was mostly reaching out to white men in Silicon Valley, in Boston, in New York, who had millions and millions either under management that they managed from other people, or that they own themselves. So I'm talking, I had to figure out what's going to be interesting to them. Someone who's rich, is being a little bit richer interesting to them? Is competition? Is knowing more? And you have to kind of research the person to find out what is driving them. You can figure that out in a couple of interviews. Yeah. What drives them? For me, let me give you a hack. Legacy and impact drive me. So if you can show me something that is going to positively impact a great deal of people, or just a few people in a huge way, I'm going to be interested in that. I'm going to be more interested in that than I know how to make filters on this camera filter for this app. It's going to, even if it's $1 billion idea, there's only so many years in my life left, Yeah. And so I'm not driven by I'm not driven by money.
Right.
I absolutely am looking for a return because I want to use money as a tool for other things, but I'm not driven by that. I'm driven by impact and legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So you can look at someone. I remember looking at like Chris Sacca's, Brad Feld's, Mark Andreessen's, all of these guys who are now investors in my fund. I remember looking in Texas on a blow-up mattress. That's all I had was a little blow-up mattress and a whiteboard that I was teaching myself about cap tables on. And I would just watch their videos and just say, okay, Chris has a bit of an ego. He admits to it. Okay. He's a little quirky. He likes the little shirt thing. He likes brand. He likes narrative. He's very curious, and he's intelligent. So he's going to like something. Okay. I bet he's going to like something that is about the narrative of what this would look like in 5 years. And what would drive him would be that we could go back and forth and talk about whether I was right or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this with every single person. I said, let me take some time and figure out what is and authentically, not like trying to trick anybody or trying to be like fake. It's like authentically, okay, that's interesting. Let me go there. And that's what it was. And that's how I talked to Chris when I finally had the chance to. I talked to him on his level, which, by the way, did not have to go higher to. Just went across.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're all equal. So it's just the strategy. It's just the research, the patience, the time saves you so much time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you talk about meeting somebody on their level. Question here though, in our community, we talk a lot about this kind of self-contortion that happens, especially if you're not the status quo, right? Depending on, whatever your identity is, it's imposter syndrome, right? Or you just don't feel like you belong there. And so you try really, really hard to be like other people, but it's exhausting. So how do you balance kind of meeting people where they're at, having this authentic conversation, but also being true to you?
For me personally, it was also part of strategy. It was an authentic strategy, but I said, you know what? If I were just to try to go in here and then wear the right clothes and say the right things and talk pretty and say the right jargon, what am I really disrupting? What am I really doing? And so I said, you know what? I'm going to, for better or for worse, go in as me because it'll be less exhausting. I don't have to remember anything. I'll just do it. And also, I have this quote that I have across my wall that says, be yourself so that the people looking for you can find you. And instead of contorting to what they want, I stay myself so I can filter out the excess, right? Because it's a waste of time to attract what is not going to dig you anyway. They're not, if so I could play the part, I could get the meeting, and then once we really got into the conversation, or maybe it's weeks from then or months from then, they're going to figure it out. They're going to figure out that I truly have these thoughts. They're going to look at my tweets. They're going to look at, we're going to have that. And so I've said to every meeting that I've had and every investor who was interested, I've said, this is what you're going to get. What you see is what you're going to get. And that includes, I've said this to people, very powerful people, that if you do something, if you end up doing something that is not cool, I'm going to call you out on it publicly. I don't care that you've invested in me and that when it comes to that. You have a standard that I'm holding you to rather than the other way around, but a combination of. I will do my part and you need to do your part.
Mm-hmm.
It happened. There was an investor that I had who was an early on investor. I considered him a friend. Yeah. And then you wake up one day and he's being accused of sexual harassment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I had not set that standard for us all early on, I would have had a conflict of interest and a whatever the word is of conscious, whatever, I would have been like, what do I do? I know exactly what I did.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately stood behind the women and said,
yeah.
This is a former friend of mine. That day became a former friend of mine. and I stand with the women, and it disappoints me that he did this.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Easy as that.
those women, I think I know who you're talking about. And there's been women who've returned money they were invested in. I mean, and that's interesting.
Oh, sure.
When I
Well, there's different there. Yeah, there's been plenty of them. So unfortunately, we could be talking about several people. There's been plenty.
I probably am talking about somebody else thinking it's your, no, these
Yes.
money. And I remember I first thought, wow, that's brave, right? This is my first reaction because, you know, we're a bootstrap startup. So I think, oh my God, we all need money. Women are underfunded. Wow, I can't believe they returned it. And then I had not to keep talking about my own shame here, but I had a minute of, well, Claire, hold on. If your mission is what it is, right? To talk about power and to do the right thing, then do you have to return the money, right? Is this, you know, should we be looking at ethics as, you know, doing the right thing? Is that brave? Right? So I had this sort of like interesting kind of inner dialogue there, but it sounds like because you upfront set the standard and kind of established what the power dynamic would be, it was clear for you what the next, you know, what the path was going to be from there.
Yeah. And it happened more than once. It happened with more than one investor, because I have dozens of white men investors. And others. It's not only white men who can sexually harass, by the way. So I've had this intersectionally as well. But this another time it happened, I had to become like a journalist, like an award-winning journalist in order to make the decision, because the flip side was I had about 12 women who were telling me, keep the money.
Oh, okay.
And spend the money on us,
right?
On future people. And it was just, I mean, and it was like an all night like conversation. Like I could have probably turned in a piece of the New York Times, you know, because of the people I interviewed and the way that I weighed it and everything. It's just
not too late. We'll read that article. We will all read that.
Yeah. I mean, it is something, you know, and you have to know how many people I have to think about before I tweet one word. So I'm authentically myself, but I do think about, am I hurting someone else? I do represent other people. I don't do, so I do, as anyone who follows me on Twitter or who will start today, I hope, at Arlan Was Here, as much as I tweet, you might think that I just go, ooh, let's go, whatever works. But I do think about each and every one, I'm very cognizant and aware of what I represent and what my fund represents. But I also, in addition to having the conversation with the investors, I had the conversation in different ways, either one-on-one or as a group, with the people I've invested in. And they too know that we may not always agree on something. Like, you know, think about politics or policy or something. You may not agree with 130 different companies that you invest in. But what I said, what I promised them was that I would always be true to myself, and that they would not ever have to worry about being betrayed by me betraying myself. That they would always be able to look to me and say, for better or for worse, I stuck to what I said I was, even if they don't agree with it. And so that's a promise I can make. I can't make this promise of I'm going to always do something in the way that you would have wanted me to, but I can make that promise up front.
Right. You know who I wish thought about his tweets before he tweeted?
Who's that?
Yeah, well, it's a he. He just had a baby. He named his baby something.
Oh, yeah. Elon.
Yeah.
Elon
doesn't think about what he's going to tweet before or maybe he does and he goes, fuck it. I'm just going to do what I want. Anyway, you made me think.
So I have a lot of thoughts about him. So I don't know I have a lot of thoughts about this. It's complex in itself.
Next fireside.
Yeah.
I want to talk about developing a thick skin, right? Because rejection is just part of all of this. That's a big question we get a lot from women is, how do you not take things personally? And my response is always, it's okay to take things personally, right? Like you're a human and it's good to have feelings. So I think maybe the question here is sort of, how do you filter it, or how do you kind of put it aside? Or how do you not kind of buy into it and, you know, make it stop you from going after what you want? So, yeah, what is that, you know, how have you kind of powered through any of the rejection that you've had?
Well, just by the numbers that I've given, rejection is like, yeses are just so few and far between. Rejection is the most of the canvas is rejection.
Mhm.
Like let's say if this is a canvas, rejection is black paint all over and yeses are white dots of stars.
Mhm. Mm.
So it's mostly that. So part of it is in knowing that it's a numbers. I put it into, it's a numbers game. You're not going to win over everybody. I'm human, so things do hurt me and things do get to me, and you're right. It's okay to feel bad about it. Especially what hurts me, what gets to me the most sometimes is like when it is a person of color or a woman who I have heard, either they say it to me or I've heard in back channels has said something about me and or done something that kind of hurts what my mission is for whatever reason.
Yeah.
That gets me. And I asked Mark Cuban, because he's a business partner of mine now. I asked him in a text a few months ago after this happened, something happened, and I said, how do you like handle what you feel is like a betrayal of the people you thought you were cool with you?
Yeah.
And he said, I get in the gym, I get mad as hell, I get angry, I fight it out, and then I beat them. Like not beat them physically, obviously, but like I win. I
Yeah.
go for success and try to outdo them. And that was like that felt good to me because he wasn't watering it down. And you can kind of translate it yourself. So there's that, is just knowing the numbers. The numbers game is that everybody is getting rejected more than they're getting approved. It's
Mhm.
just the way it is. If you're doing anything bold, by the way, it's even 10 times, 100 times that. Second part of it is what the reason I was able to even complete the get to the milestone of starting the fund after years of being rejected, and get to the milestone of reaching more than 100 companies after being laughed out of the room when I said I was going to do that years prior, is because it wasn't all about me.
Mhm.
If this were just like, I got to figure out a way for me to become the biggest this and that and the other, and boom, then it would have like lost its luster a long time ago. I wouldn't have had the fortitude at all, the energy at all. But because I know it's so much about so many other people, like, and it's happening in real time, so it's not conjecture. It's just I know it. It's about the people who've invested in. It's about the people who are observing. It's about the thousands of people who are starting companies because they know they can now. That sort of thing. The employees, etc. That has been all of the fuel I need for the rest of my life. So what I say to people is, for instance, let's say you're going in to negotiate for a raise or for another gig or for whatever. There's a couple things there, but what I'll talk about here is you may get rejected, and you most likely will because the odds say you will. But what if you, by doing that, making that move, have made it that much easier for the next person to do it?
Right. Right.
And if you take other people in the room with you mentally, I've found that that's been very helpful, and it's part of strategy. So it's like heartwarming, yes, but it's also strategy, because you can tell yourself, it's okay if I don't get this, because some other return on investment of my time and my effort will happen in a different way.
Right.
That's not just this one transactional thing. And by the way, that's negotiation for me 101, is having multiple ways a rejection will yield something for you before you walk into the room or before you have the negotiation.
Mm.
That way, it's not binary. It's not like, oh, they said no, I didn't get it, so I've lost. If you go in before and they say no, but if they say no, now they this and that, there's different things, and we talk about in the book. I talk about it in other things I talk about. Um, uh, you just kind of raise, you tip the scales in your favor. You press your thumb down on the scales in your favor, and that's what I say we need to do. That we need to stack the deck in our favor, because we're making up for a lot of lost time.
Yeah.
We're making up for a lot of lost time. So is mantra is do no harm, but do what you got to do.
Mm. Mm. And this is what I love about the chat, because people are commenting. They're like repeating what you're saying. So this is helpful even for me. And by the way, we're gonna download the transcript, which is great.
Great.
A lot of capital letters. Chills. Yes. Yeah. So there was a quote also that I read about you about getting a no, but then around the corner, something, finding a better, brighter, bigger yes around the corner. When you look back, what for you, what was maybe, I don't know if it's your first yes or maybe a time where, it was game changing for you?
Yeah, it's happened so many times where I've gotten this no, an important no that I thought was like, that was tough. That was a tough one. But that no, this hasn't happened every time, but it's happened many times where that no paved the way for a better yes. Like for instance, October 2017, I got into this whole to do on Twitter and elsewhere about Peter Thiel, who's an investor, first major investor in Facebook, and he's a gay man who doesn't act it. That's another story. I don't
Right.
mean act it like act it, but I mean he doesn't. It doesn't seem to me that he cares too much about the LGBTQ community or anyone. And he doubled down after Trump had these tapes saying that he was grabbing people by their genitals. He doubled down and gave him another $1 million towards his thing. And so I, of course, took issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know the guy, never talked to him, but I have his book. I still have his book because I think you should have contrarian views. And I said online, I don't dig that. That's really ridiculous and blah blah blah. And I'm not going to send my I'm not going to send any referrals anymore to a certain accelerator that has him associated with. And it was Y Combinator. I don't have to beat around the bush. It's Y Combinator at the time because we were good at YC. And that's all I was saying was I'm not going to do it while he's there. I'm just not. Everybody else can do it. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying I'm not going to do it. And they got picked up in Forbes, CNN, all kinds, Barron's. Everybody picked this up, and it was tough. It was really tough. The onslaught of whatever from Silicon Valley, from these followers of his, or people, or libertarians, or people who said, including some friends of mine who were libertarians, who are just like, this you're I don't know, whatever. Just imagine what Elon would have said. So, and they're
Nonsense.
buddies. By the way. They
Nonsense.
came from the same company. They're buddies. So, yeah. So I said at this time that it was so hard. I said, I'm going to see if I can get us acquired really quickly. Because this is so hard. Like I just lost all momentum. I'm not going to step down. I'm not going to say I'm going to apologize. I'm not going to say I was wrong because I wasn't. But on behalf of the company, for us to stay in business, I better get someone else bigger than us to acquire us so that we have a fighting chance. And it didn't work out. And it was just a real quick thing. And it didn't work out. And I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I mean, within days, I had people reaching out, billionaires, millionaires reaching out, and they're like, what do we do to help you? I love what you said. I love that. What do we do? You have conviction, you have a voice, you have a drive. What do we do? And if I had just sort of this one group said no to us and what are we going to do? That would have been the end. And it was their no. If I can't even imagine being under someone else's umbrella,
Right.
especially at the amount that they were going to buy us, acquire. Oh, it hurts me to think about it. I mean, but at the time it felt like, oh, I don't know if I have any other options. Mm-hmm. And today it's like, I wouldn't have it any other way, even though some of this is so hard still. Mm-hmm. And even though we've had all kinds of financial issues left and right, we have autonomy to do some really amazing things. And so that's just one example. It's happened a lot. Mm-hmm. And you gotta wait. You gotta hold on to it.
Yeah, and this patience. And sometimes what I find is it's helpful to imagine yourself like you're in a movie and you're the main character. And when you're watching a movie, there's not this one thing that happens and the movie is necessarily done, right? Like they have to go through this to get to the next scene. And you may not realize it for, 45 minutes in the movie, but now it's, aha, this is why she had to go through this. Yes. I want to shift a little bit to what do you look for in your fund? Right. We can Google that. So I guess maybe a better question is what makes a really good pitch? Or maybe what makes a really bad pitch? So
yeah, I have, I have a new online course about raising capital. And I'll tell you the thing, it's Arlan was here, ARLAN was here, .teachable.com. And I have a whole section about pitching do's and don'ts, all of that. I'll talk to you a little bit about 2 pitches that I heard this week that got my attention in a sea of hundreds of pitches.
Okay.
So I get thousands of emails and DMs and all that, messages a week, and I get hundreds of pitches or hundreds of check this out or this or that, right? So these 2 stood out. One of them, the reason it stood out, because I've been thinking like, it's not an easy thing to answer because it's such a X factor,
Right.
but because these 2 happened this week, it's easier to think about, to reflect on. One of them was what I said earlier about the impact, me being driven by impact and legacy, and not necessarily just like nonprofit impact. I'm talking about just like what you're doing, ladies get paid, right? This group said that they are working on something for a niche market of which I'm part of, and it's for healthcare in that space. In a way, and the way they pitched it really quickly was, it's in a way that adds dignity. I should add dignity to what drives me. I'm big on that. So just very briefly, when you're LGBTQ, a lot of times you have trouble with doctors and nurses not understanding certain things. I had a male gynecologist once. So I was already vulnerable in the situation. I was in my early 20s and had a male, he was there. And I told him I was gay so that he would know that, because he was talking about sexual interactions and stuff.
Yeah.
He leaves the room, he comes back and leans into the doorway and says, out like where other people can hear. And he literally says, do you gals play with any toys down there? And I said, what? And he said, I just want to know if you if there's any chance you would have had an infection from it or something. Because, could talk. And this happened. So I know exactly what they're talking about. Also, because I'm Black, I've had certain people not want to touch me in certain ways that they need to touch me to be my doctor in emergency situations. My brother doesn't get the same kind of care that I do because he's intimidating to people. So anyway, the point of it is, this group was saying we're working on a way that makes it, directly connects LGBTQ people to doctors who are already trained and would understand and be whatever. And this is how we're doing, and this is our background, and this is why we're good at it, and this is what we've already done. This is the traction we have. And so it was very concise. I could see the business case study for it, and I knew the immediate impact it would have if it was to be successful. That was interesting to me. So those things you can take that case study and parse what you need from it, rather than me telling you this is how you dress and this is what you say to me, right? The other one was a Black woman. This was by email. That was by video. This is by email. And her email was concise. I didn't have to scroll. She told me her name, the company. She linked me if I wanted to look at it. She said, I'm going to make it up, but just say I'm an aerospace engineer. Let's just say that's what she said. And my company is based on the 20 years experience I have in that space. And what I want to do with it is this sentence that I didn't understand that made me want to lean in and find out more. So if you're working on something that I wouldn't be able to go to school to do, or it would take me more than 10 years to figure out and do it on my own, I'm going to be interested. Again, I'm talking about, you're trying to save me time. You're trying to have me live vicariously through you. You're trying to help me. That's what you're trying to help me do and other investors do. And you're going to find out, again, by studying them, what they're driven by. And then ultimately, what I hope you do is, that the best way to do it, in my opinion, is bootstrapping and having autonomy and control of your own destiny, and not needing me or anyone else for fundraising. That would be, because I know we're running out of time, I want to make sure that even as someone who makes investments and has taken investment, that still is my favorite form of fundraising, is to bootstrap. And I do that with my own, with the second company that I have, or third company that I have.
So this might be a question for myself, but bootstrapping, right? We've been doing it for 3 years, but you got to spend money to make money, right? There's that expression. And at some point, should we stop bootstrapping? So maybe this is more of a question of like, when do you know if that you're ready to fundraise, or where you're
Right.
doing some self-damage here to not, to not try to expand a little bit more?
I don't know if it's self-damage. I think it just really depends on what you're working on. I'm just a big believer that for some reason we all think we need to have billion-dollar companies, and we are, $100 million companies. And if everybody in this room had a six-figure company per year, I think we'd all have a certain quality of life that would be very drastically different than what it may be today. And that is a great thing to aspire to. And I just think, I'm like, why are we all skipping that? Why do we have to skip that? So that's just my opinion. I also, in this course I just mentioned, I talk about, like, it's called How to Raise Capital from Scratch. So I'm telling people how to raise capital, but bootstrapping it could either be what you do only, or it could be what you do at the beginning to raise the value of your company, so that when you do go out and fundraise, you have traction that is attractive, and your value is higher than it would have been. So you're giving away less of your company in exchange for that banker who's that venture capitalist or that angel investor is essentially a bank handing you over money that is going to go away sometime.
Right.
It's not going to last forever, but the equity you gave to them will. So that's what I'm saying. So it's either one, and both are a tool or a strategy that you can decide what you want to do. And for one of my companies, I do only bootstrapping. It's only revenue in and revenue out. That's the only thing I do. For the two others, one of them is a fund, is a group of funds. So it's the only way I can do it is capital in, and that's from other people. But one of them is sort of it's our Backstage studio. So it's a combination. So we've taken on investment, and we also generate. Today, we kind of stop taking investment, and we just only generate revenue, and for better or worse, even if it means we're close to the bone, we're scared, we're worried, it's better than pound of flesh, giving away a pound of flesh.
Regina,
So in some companies, it's not going to work that way. It just doesn't work. Some companies, you're going to need that infusion of capital. And I get that too. That's the world I live in and work in.
Right. Regina just asked a really good question. She said, can a business really be successful these days without backing a VC, when these firms that get funding get to focus on growth without regard for profit?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's a fantastic question. I won't take anything away from it, but let's talk about WeWork.
Yeah.
Let's talk about WAG. Let's talk about what's the other, Casper. Let's talk about all these companies that have a growth at all costs. Give me $100 million at every whim. What really, most of their employees, if you look at WeWork, most of their employees, all that equity they thought they had, they don't have it anymore. It's not worth anything.
Right.
Now what they had was, for several years, they had a gig that they really enjoyed. And I know that, from talking to a lot of people, they had a gig they liked, and they were able to impact other people's lives, and that was worth it to them, for some. But that's like one measurement. So yes, you're going to have companies that you're competing with who have more resources. And again, there's no blanket answer. For some companies, yes, absolutely. I think you're going to need that outside capital at certain growth points, and that this conversation is too short for us to tell you when. But the majority of the people, I've seen 6,000 plus companies in the last 4.5 years. 6,000, all run by underrepresented founders. Those are the ones I'm counting. So it's more than that. By underrepresented, underestimated founders. And at least, and I'm being generous, at least 80%, I keep spitting, at least 80% should not look for outside capital. At least 80% of them, in my opinion, could have a much higher quality of life if they bootstrapped it. And you think about MailChimp. So there's a tale of two. I mean, there's MailChimp, which a lot of us have used. They've never taken outside capital. They do $600 million a year in revenue. Let me tell you, I've been there. I interact with them. They're one of our partners. I've spoken to the CEO multiple times. They can do whatever the F they want to do
Had no,
because they took 17 years to get here. It took longer. They could have taken money year 2, and yes, it would have been faster and easier and this and that, but would they still be here? I don't know if they would, because their VCs might have said 600 or 500 million a year. That's great, but you know what's better? $1 billion.
yeah, yeah.
Why aren't you doing $1 billion? You need to do this. You need to hire more people and pay them less and treat them poorly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm passionate about it because it's just not one size fits all. And it's not just what you see. You have to look between the Instagram posts. You can't just say, oh, well, that company, it worked out for them, so it must be the way it's going to work out for me. There's a lot more control and autonomy that you have right now. If you're a company that's not been able to raise any capital, I do, because you own 100% of your company. I envy you that you and your co-founders or you and your employees own 100% of your company. Hold on to that as long as you can.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Repurpose that rejection into something very powerful.
Yeah, and we're talking about representation matters, right? So if the stories that we're seeing are all of these, huge companies that raise tons of money very quickly, right? We think that this is the way that it has to be.
Yeah.
Question that I'm sure you're getting asked all the time now: COVID, how is this affecting? 2 ways. How is this, as an entrepreneur, right? Can I still raise money? That's one question. Second, has it changed your strategy for the kinds of companies you're investing in, or sort of the way you're doing things?
Hasn't changed my strategy. I'll give you a couple of links so that you can check it out, because we do have to wrap up and I have an 11 o'clock. But if you go to, I have a podcast called Your First Million. And on Monday or Tuesday, I recorded an episode, just me talking into the phone, that was called Insights for Entrepreneurs and Investors, where I broke down the National Venture Capital Association's latest white paper and their latest letter to the Treasury Department, and kind of made it accessible to all of us. That is a lot of my answer in how I'm thinking about investing and how investors who have far more resources than I do, so it's not just about what we can do at Backstage, are thinking, and what the landscape is. It's pretty sobering, but there's a lot of optimism there that I have. So I would say check that out. It's about 30 minutes long. Check that out. Also go to backstagecapital.com/together. We have a lot of resources there, including that conversation with Mark Cuban that I think is very helpful. I would really encourage you. You can hear it as audio or video. It's really, really good stuff. But other types of CPA, legal, all kinds of stuff is there for you. And then finally, go to itsaboutdamntime.com. If you go to itsaboutdamntime.com, you can pick up the book. You can get the audio, which I recorded, which I'm very happy about. You can get the physical copy or an ebook. I would highly recommend it. Black Enterprise says that they just said over the weekend, it's full of crisis advice. Never would have known this would be the time this would be released, but thank goodness it is, because I wrote it about being in crisis for most of my life, being in chaos and crisis for most of my life, and how I got through it. And how I still am getting through it, it's no beautiful, happy ending, right? But this is about that in a very accessible way. And I think it'll spark a lot in a lot of people. So I encourage you to go there. You can look around that website for all kinds of things, including the online course and free resources and all sorts of things that I encourage you to take a look at. So that's where I'll stop there. And there's a lot of COVID conversation on that podcast that I mentioned, Your First Million.
Besides the book, can we buy your sweatshirts? You always have great sweatshirts.
It's coming. We have the underestimated t-shirts that we put out. We do a launch, and so we put them out. People want the It's About Damn Time, they want this. This first went out to only about 200 people who are in my book launch team.
Okay.
So it was that's why you get that, but we're going to make it available for other people. I appreciate you asking that.
Oh my goodness. We thought at first we were only going to get 45 minutes of you. So thank you for the 60. I wish we had more, but I know you're.
Well, I appreciate you all. I think you're doing a great job. This is an awesome group, and that Slack sounds like it's on fire.
I will
Slack group.
I will add you, but you might want to be anonymous.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna get a lot
Well,
more
here's what I'll
turnover.
do. Before I leave, I'm gonna just go by and say hi to people real quick. Hi, Bella. Saw you dancing. Hi, Bianca. Bianca's doing her thing. What's up, Nakia? Hey, Sandra, Miriam, Grace, Elisa, Erica, Lester, Jessica, Rebecca, Kristen, Nancy, Tracy, Janine, Elizabeth, Tatiana, that's my niece's name, Regina, Samantha. It was so great to talk to you all. Really appreciate it. Pauline, what's up, Pauline? Yes. All
Um,
right. Okay. So, and
yeah.
Ashley, you've been so super cool. Ashley and Lauren, I see you reacting a lot. I see Erica with the CK reacting a lot. Erica Mays reacting a lot. So I appreciate you all. If you're on the phone, if you are here, Bianca's, I got you. I know I like you already, Bianca. I can tell. Wherever you are in the world, in the country, we got this. We got this together. Let's go. Let's go. Get the book. Join me at Arlan Was Here. Let's get it together. Let's get it together. Let's go.
Thank you. Happy Friday.
Bye, everybody.
Really appreciate the work you're doing. We'll
Bye,
see
everybody.
you
I'll see
on the
you.
internet.
Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it.
Bye, guys.